今日もよろしくお願いします。ご機嫌いかがですかということで、のんびりゆっくりご視聴よろしくお願いします。何々しながらのあれで、料理しながらとか本読みながらとか、そんな感じで見ていただければ嬉しいです。
Donald Trump's announcement that Project Freedom was being put on hold yesterday caught many by surprise, particularly after top officials spent the day discussing the plan and its goals. Well, let's cross to DC and speak to our correspondent, Bernd de Boosman. Bernd, difficult decisions on what to accept or not to accept from Iran in terms of making a deal, and confusing as well for people watching this from the outside.
It has very confusing, and as you mentioned, it's been 24 hours full of various twists and turns. For now, however, President Trump still seems at the very least cautiously optimistic about the prospects of a deal. In the last half hour or so, he was addressing a gathering of military mothers at the White House. He said he still feels quite confident that Iran will come to a deal, but at the same time, he, again, as he did on Truth Social this morning, suggested that Iran could also be coerced into a deal. He said that they'll come to a deal one way or another, kind of subtly suggesting that the possibility of further strikes remains on the table. And experts I've spoken to here in Washington over the last few hours, they also caution what this deal entails. The one-page memorandum that's been reported in various news outlets at best could amount to kicking the can down the road. Some of the issues at hand, particularly the issue of Iran's uranium stocks that President Trump wants to take possession of, those are enormously technical details. In the Obama administration, for example, it took 20 months to kind of iron out details about the future of Iran's nuclear program. So I think he's cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, many people here see this essentially as a deal to continue talking about a deal, kind of opening the pathway to a more detailed agreement rather than kind of a deal that would end this war once and for all.
Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, today, global oil prices dipped below $100 per
barrel
following reports of that possible deal. But figures show 13,000 flights have been cancelled globally this month alone after the war caused jet fuel prices to soar. With more, here's our deputy economics editor, Darshini David.
Several hurdles remain, but this is the closest the US and Iran have got to an agreement. It's been another quiet day in the Strait of Hormuz, but could a plan to get traffic moving be looming? Well, earlier the oil price dipped to below $100 per barrel, more than 40% above where we were ahead of the war, because after all those previous twists, investors are cautious. And even with a swift resolution, the impact of this is being felt. Take travel. Airlines have cancelled 13,000 flights globally in May. That's 2 million seats. Turkish, Emirates, Lufthansa, among those cancelling, but these amount to just 1% of global flights, and some may reflect contingency planning, cutting back in a relatively quiet month to ensure there's fuel for the peak summer season. Here in the UK, however, airlines say they're largely operating as normal. But fares are going up. These are some of the airlines that have already hiked their prices. Some are more than 50% higher than last year. Jet fuel accounts for more than a quarter of airlines' costs. That's more than double. And there's only so much they've stocked up in advance. Tonight, the government is urging people not to change travel plans. EasyJet says customers can book with confidence, but the horizon is unclear. A smooth ride in the skies this summer may depend on what happens on the ground and in that narrow waterway in the Middle East.
So where does this all leave us now? Well, it appears both the White House and the regime in Tehran are in some kind of standoff. Both sides know a return to conflict is not what they want. So, who blinks first? Let's speak to our world affairs correspondent, Paul Adams. In 24 hours ago, both sides were literally exchanging fire in Hormuz, apparently. Now we're talking about peace talks being resolved. So what's your assessment of where we are right now?
Look, I think we're still in a very fragile state. In fact, I think there were reports that US forces were once again interdicting an Iranian vessel today and using force in the process. So, there's plenty of potential still for this to flare up. But I think you're absolutely right. The two sides do not really want to go back to war, and I think the Americans in particular don't want to go back to all-out war. Project Freedom, which was introduced just on Monday, was a bit of a last throw of the dice. The sort of theory that somehow the Americans could maintain their own blockade while puncturing the Iranian blockade. Well, they did that, and they only got 2 vessels through. But in the process of that, they prompted the Iranians to respond with attacks both at sea and also crucially against oil facilities in the United Arab Emirates. So I think the consequences of continuing with Project Freedom were deemed to be simply too risky. In the background, while all of that was going on, we now know that there were all sorts of messages flying this way and that, with Pakistan still very keen to be seen as a key mediator here. Perhaps the Chinese also playing a role. Bear in mind that the Iranian foreign minister has been in Beijing, and Donald Trump, of course, is going to Beijing for a very, very important meeting with President Xi next week. And so all of that has been going on, and at the moment we seem to be in a situation in which the latest version of this memorandum, which Bernd was just describing, is out there. Everyone is taking a look at it. We don't know what is in it, and we certainly don't know if the two sides are going to agree to pursue it. But it does seem to be some kind of blueprint which would allow the end of hostilities, a gradual end of hostilities, the gradual opening of the Strait of Hormuz, and then setting the scene for the really difficult negotiations on things like Iran's nuclear program.
I mean, it almost feels, doesn't it, that both sides have just come to the conclusion that they just don't want this to carry on anymore, rather than one side necessarily blinking first.
Yes, look, all that confidence that we heard from President Trump at the beginning of this, back at the end of February, and that we still hear from time to time from Pete Hegseth and actually from Donald Trump himself, it's really kind of gone because, you know, a war launched originally to definitively remove all prospect of Iran getting a nuclear weapon is now probably going to result in a deal to resolve a problem that never existed in the first place, and that is the blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. If that can be resolved to the satisfaction of both sides, and even that is a big if, because the Iranians are in the process of implementing a whole new regime for the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not clear whether they're prepared to walk away from that. The whole question of Iran's nuclear program has sort of receded. The Americans cannot be seen to abandon that issue, and whatever the memorandum emerges, from an American point of view, it has to have that front and center with the prospect of negotiations soon to address that complicated issue and to deal with it in a way that Donald Trump can sell as an improvement on the previous nuclear deal negotiated under Donald Trump. But the fact of the matter is that an issue which Donald Trump thought he was going to resolve along with Israel through the exclusive use of blunt force is now going to have to be resolved, is perhaps being resolved by diplomacy.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much indeed, Paul Adams. Well, whether you're joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or television, thanks for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran War Today.
Same time tomorrow.
They love you, come on.
Hi, guys.
They love you, yeah. We love you. Thanks for, we have lots to talk about. First I want to get into, you did a thing with Architectural Digest.
Yeah.
Where you went back to the Warner lot,
Yeah.
where you filmed Friends,
Yes.
and The
To
Comeback
come back.
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
That's kind of insane that you got both giant shows in the same studio.
Well, it was insane, yes, that the two most impactful shows for me
Yeah. Where I'm,
were finishing up on the same stage.
that's what
I know, because this is the last of the comeback too. Yeah.
Review with the, I think they have a plaque outside.
And then, yes, I tried not to cry because I never would have stopped. Warner Brothers put the comeback on the plaque. That's Friends, that's Mike and Molly, that's the Friends reunion, and then
Mom, that? Oh no! Oh no! I don't want to see this kid cry. Don't cry at our show.
okay, I won't.
Yeah. But that really, it's gotta be just. I don't know how. I can't describe it.
Yeah, no, and then also, what you don't know is that my son, I got pregnant,
Yeah.
gave birth,
Wow.
He was 5 when we finished, but all on that night, and not all on that stage, but you know what I mean. It was that time in my life.
I missed that episode, but yes,
Where I got pregnant, gave birth, and yeah.
And
But
he was 5 on
he
Friends?
was 5 when we left, and he was on. He's in the comeback, and all of his stuff was on stage 24.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I didn't even realize how much it would be. It was
Memories.
kind of
It's just-
overwhelming
Yeah.
and great.
Oh, and fantastic.
Yeah.
The best memories.
Yeah.
There was a picture of you in front of that fountain where obviously you made the iconic Friends opening where you're all wet and dancing in the fountain.
Yeah.
Was that always the idea to be soaking wet and dancing in the fountain?
I guess at the end they saved that for the end. I mean, yeah. Look, I'm all for fun.
Talk to me. Look at this kid. Yeah, but yeah, that was.
We had already shot a show and it was late, and they went, so now we're just gonna run over to the ranch. It wasn't on the Warner Brothers lot. It's a
Yeah.
separate thing.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna do the openings. It'll be really quick. Oh, okay.
You're real fast, yeah.
All right. And it was
Cut
not
to.
quick. Yeah. Cut to. We're
3 in the morning.
It's gonna be daylight. We gotta hurry up. And they just kept going. And then it was, all right, now get in the fountain. What?
Yeah, we're not getting in the fountain.
Yeah.
Who was the first one to get in the fountain?
Fun. I don't know.
Come on.
Some kiss ass. No, I don't know. One of the guys just.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, I
Of course,
can
you do it.
But we're supposed to be laughing, and everyone's too like cold and angry.
You're freezing and dancing, and you're like, okay, we got it, this take,
Yeah,
guys.
but Matthew Perry made us laugh. We are laughing because Matthew's like, what are we wet? What are we in a fountain dancing?
Jesus,
Okay.
buddy. Unbelievable, right? I heard, I was reading somewhere that you said you have a new thought on the Ross and Rachel. We were on a break.
Yeah, I'm afraid now to
No,
bring it
this
up.
is scandalous. Get ready for some scandal, some tea. What is your take? Were they on a break?
Well, no. But it's beyond that. It's beyond break or not.
It's beyond. It's,
He was
it's level.
a bad boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at that! I agree! Someone finally said it, yes! He's a bad boyfriend.
I feel better.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Thank you for this.
No,
Thank
wait
you.
a minute, please, come on. Anytime you
But
need
we
us, we're
did the
here.
reunion just like 4 or 5 years ago, or they were on a break. We were all still like, they were on a break. Like
Funny.
Rachel, that hysterical shrew, not letting him sleep with someone and won't get back with him. She shouldn't have gotten back with him because he was horrible. Anyway, it shouldn't have been about, to me, it's like, I don't care if he slept with 3 other women or no other women.
Yeah.
You had to work you had a crisis at work, so you weren't available for a few nights, and he flipped out, and you're like, wow.
Yes! I love this. Have you talked to David about this? He knows now. All right, we'll talk about that later. Let's talk about the comeback. By the way, thank you for doing this. You're so funny in this
thanks.
show. And this
Thank you.
is your characters loosely based on something you used to do at the Groundlings?
Yeah, loosely, yeah. I did a character monologue. Remember at the
The
Groundlings?
Groundlings is a
character
great
monologue.
improv troupe in LA on Melrose.
And sketch
And
comedy.
sketch comedy.
Yeah.
I went there to learn how to do improv and sketch comedy. I love them.
よし
Shout out to Jim Wise.
こんな感じで進んでますね。
Yeah, she was not my teacher, but I learned to teach under her, and she was the most nurturing.
今日もご視聴ありがとうございました。チャンネル登録と高評価よろしくお願いします。